Thank you so much for having me here. I feel like I'm with my people, so thank you. And you know, all the work that you all have been doing for so many years, diving into the science, making the charts, putting everything in a digestible manner has been so helpful for me on my journey. So I just want to give you all the credit for where I now am. So this is me going back to my climate activism days. My story is remarkable in how normal, I guess, it is in falling into this ideology. So I am now about to be 36, but my climate journey exposure began, like a lot of people of my millennial generation, when I watched An Inconvenient Truth in high school. That was in 2006. I mean, it scared the living bejesus out of me. I kind of almost had a panic attack afterwards, and then kind of had to say, because I thought I only had 10 years left to live, basically, after watching that movie. And no responsible adult guided me in any other information. It was actually shown as an entire high school presentation. I was so overwhelmed by it afterwards, thinking I only have until I'm 26. And then almost a second later, self-preservation kicked in, and I said, I guess I'll worry about that later. I'm just gonna be a teenager. And then I met the climate cause again when I was in my 20s. At 25, I joined this news company called Now This News, which is a very millennial, left-wing news company, and we were the first company to put, news company to put videos with subtitles on them on Facebook, which now is the thing to do, and everyone's doing it on TikTok and Reels, but we were kind of the original doom-scrolling video company, and I was a video producer there, and it was a very left-wing environment. And at that time, again, typical kind of millennial, lived through George Bush, the forever wars, became an Obama supporter, just because that was what my peers were doing, and then became a Bernie Sanders supporter. And that was sort of just my easy trajectory politically, and with that came obviously an understanding that climate change was happening. And while I'm at this news company, I'm scrolling on my algorithms every day, and I'm getting exposed to more climate stuff, specifically the Dakota Access Pipeline protest that happened in 2016, which up in that middle photo up there, I ended up going. And all these activists were on my news feed saying, cover the Dakota Access Pipeline, cover the Dakota Access Pipeline, cover DAPL. And so, being the good journalist that I am, I just decided I wanted to cover this. But because I was coming from such a left-wing perspective, I just covered it so biasly. I was so taken by this narrative of the Native Americans are being oppressed by this evil fossil fuel company, building this pointless pipeline that we don't even need that anymore, right? Aren't fossil fuels outdated? That's where my information was coming from. That's how uninformed I was. So I ended up covering that, and the videos I made got hundreds of millions of views on Facebook. I kind of made it go viral. I really apologize. And that will not be the last time in my story that I've done things like that. Luckily now I'm using my powers for good. But at that time, I made Dakota Access Pipeline go viral. Became a big movement, like we all know. I ended up going, and I really thought I was we were awakening the world, right? I'm on the right side of history here, people. I'm helping this oppressed group, I'm fighting the evil of corporations, the capitalism, and that was where the thinking really stopped for me. It was so ideological. At the same time, I watched, to inform myself, I watched some documentaries like Gasland and Leonardo DiCaprio's film Before the Flood, which now I know these are very biased films, and that was me getting informed. And so I did this for many years, from 2015, when I first got into it, till 2019 going into COVID, and at that time I also built up a social media following. So I started to have all this traction, and I'm getting all these accolades as this climate influencer, and I ended up getting 50,000 followers on Instagram at the peak of my following. And during this time, the AOC thing is just sort of random, but that picture is so good, right? You can't not show that. I met her at an event, and she was running for Congress, and we're the same age, and so we hit it off, and I ended up doing a video for her, which also got tens of millions of views, and she went viral after that and won a few months later, so you're welcome. And during this time, as I'm a climate activist, I had a series called One Small Step, which were steps you could take to lower your carbon emissions. I always was giving up plastic in July. I was obsessed with composting. I never could really go full vegetarian, but I knew meat was bad. I felt bad every time I ate a burger, all of the classic stuff. Worried about my how much I was throwing out. But I will say, even when I was in the movement, it always kind of didn't make sense. And I would always kind of think, if I just kept digging a little further, I would start to see the contradictions. The fact that, for example, plastic, which was persona non grata, you realize that it has a low carbon footprint. It's very flexible. You can use it for things. One moment I remember when I was giving up plastic, my sister-in-law had all these frozen plastic bags for breastfeeding her daughter, and I was making a video give up plastic, and then meanwhile, out of sight, she's having these plastic bags for breast milk, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, actually that's a really great technology because you can't really do that with glass and steel. And so even though I would have those moments, but I was so indoctrinated into the group think and all of the value that I gained from having the support of the group, that I would quickly kind of have moments of clarity and toss them out of my mind and get back into the propaganda. And I would just push a certain message to my audience. So it almost felt like I was split. And this is all observations I'm obviously making in retrospect, if I have to think back to that time. Because for me, my transition out of the movement was not one day I was fully bought in and the next day I changed my mind. It was, I always kind of had questions, but the power of the belonging and feeling like I was a good person, I'm advocating for the Native Americans, right? I'm fighting the capitalism, and my peer group is always all very, very left-wing at my work. That kept me from thinking critically, which I think is just so interesting to shine a light on the mindset of the activists and how I think for a lot of them, it's an identity. It's emotional. It's black and white thinking of I'm on the right side of history. I'm one of the good guys, right? And those fossil fuel companies are evil. The capitalists are evil. But then we go through COVID 2020. And I think two moments that happened over 2020, plus the combination of working from home. So I'm no longer with all these peers every day that were very left. And having a little bit of distance in that regard helped. And then two things. One, the proliferation of plastic during COVID, where I went from being literally panic attack if I used a plastic straw and trying to get plastic straws banned, to all of a sudden everyone's got PPE, masks, gloves, there's barriers in every bar, and the same people who were don't use a plastic straw are well, actually, it's fine in this case. And I'm whoa, I'm having whiplash. This is crazy. And then at the same time, I look around and go, wow, we've proliferated more plastic in the last 2 weeks, during these lockdown times than I would have ever anticipated in my entire life. But we're fine. It's not an apocalypse. Our civilization is able to produce plastic and process plastic, and it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that our civilization is more resilient than the climate movement was making me believe. So that was one. And then also, we're shut down. We can't go to see grandma. We can't fly anywhere. Everything's getting canceled. Our freedoms are very much limited. And then by the end of that year, our carbon emissions only went down 5%. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm arguing for net zero. What is net zero going to require of us? And what freedoms would we have to give up to go net zero? Because I actually hate COVID lockdowns. I hate that I have freedom of movement, and I hate the government involvement in my life. And we're not going to be getting to net zero just on goodwill. And so those two things, I decided to seek out alternative perspectives. And that was that year, 2020, mid-2020, I guess. Michael Schellenberger's book, Apocalypse Never, came out. So I ate that up. I listened to it secretly on tape. And it was the best book I'd read in years. And I was oh my God, it was the lights were coming on in my mind. And then in 2021, I guess, 2021, Unsettled by Steve Koonin came out, and I listened to that as well. And that, I think why in my bio I say I became a skeptic in 2021, where I was all of a sudden really bought in. But at that same time, I left my job. I got a new job behind the scenes because I was so over this persona. I was I'm going behind the scenes. Left my job. I ended up getting pregnant with my first son. I now have two kids. They're 2 and 4 years old. And so I thought to myself, okay, I'm going behind the scenes. Now that was my climate phase. I'm moving on and I'm never going to go back. And I lived like that for a few years. I ended up taking my job at the Free Press in 2022, end of 2022. And this whole time, I'm continuing to educate myself, learning more about, trusting my instincts again. It's almost like leaving groupthink. It was like the walls were coming down off my mind because I was no longer in this very left-wing environment. And so I started to think for myself, which is it's such a stereotypical thing to say, like, think for yourself. But I really had not been thinking for myself. I've been giving up all my thinking to this climate, very leftist peer group I was part of. And so, yeah, I just started building myself up again and being at the Free Press. If you're familiar with the outlet, it's an amazing company started by Barry Weiss, who left New York Times. And it's full of really independent, heterodox thinkers. And so I think for me, just like it was almost being at the feet of like the masters of like thinking for yourself. And so I learned a lot from being in that environment. And then this past year, so now it actually has not even been a year since I posted for the first time, again, on the good side now. But in May of 2025, yeah, thank you. But in May of 2025, my younger son turned 1 in that end of April. And if you have kids, especially if you're a mom, like that first year, you're kind of just like in survival mode. But when he became 1, I kind of had a moment, and I was like, okay, everyone has a moment in your life. You take stock of your life. What type of life do I want to lead? And the thing that came back to me was, I don't want to be silent my entire life and one day be on my deathbed and say, I did not speak out with my new beliefs because of fear. Like, it just felt really pathetic. And so I decided to be brave, and I started to post on TikTok, my social media account on TikTok, May 20th of last year.
Yo, how's it going, my fellow youths, man? Climate change is where it's at, dude. There's no such thing as fossil fuel.
Is this a scammer?
Oil and gas, so nice to be here around people. There's no consensus on oil and gas. In fact, you look like a door. You should go into your sink or underneath your sink. You're getting echoed. Yes! Yes,
Who is that?
bringing out the crazy.
I love that.
Yes, Lucy's.
I didn't know you could ignore science. It's so important.
This is when you
Oh.
This is when.
This is when you know you're winning.
This is when you know that This is when you made it.
Wow, I'm so honored. What freaks? Thanks, guys. Who are those losers? I wish they had listened to me instead of being dummies. Anyway, I posted a year ago, and I came back. That's so funny. Do they do that a lot? Do you guys know who those people are?
Oh, they did that many times. Believe me,
They need to get a life.
They used to, but they haven't for a while.
Oh my God, I'm so flattered. Anyway, who cares? They're losers, but maybe we'll win them over one day. Anyway, I started posting May 20th of last year. I posted a month-long series on my TikTok where it was called, I'm a former climate activist. This is now why I think the climate movement is a scam. That was my entry back in. And from there, I just went back to Instagram. I started building up my X account, and so many opportunities have come from it. In my intro, they said I get millions of views a month across platforms. I have a book deal now to write about this topic. I'm very excited. And I have the same publisher as Steve Koonin, so it's really exciting because he was such an inspiration to me, and if you look at my videos, I quote his work all the time. And ultimately, like, my goal and mission with speaking out, and the reason that I do, is because the young people have been so misled, and the mainstream media, our politicians, the governmental organizations, you guys all know better than me, they're just so ideologically captured. It's such an injustice. I think it's a crime against humanity, the amount of human capital and anxiety that has been wasted on this topic. And so if I can just play my part of just representing what you guys have all been doing for decades, I'm so happy to do that. I think of myself as a bridge between what the work so many of you guys have been doing and bringing it to a younger, more online audience, people who are used to the short form videos. That's what I am best at. So thank you so much. I'm so glad I was interrupted by those activists. It feels like an honor, meant to be. And yeah, thank you for having me.